Okay, everybody, let's grab our seats. 8:30. We have a couple announcements going on here. This is really important. December 25th is a Saturday, right? It's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, whatever, I don't know. Christmas Eve, right? I think it is a Saturday, maybe 24th, I don't know. But anyway, the point is it falls on a Saturday. Do you guys want a meeting that night?
Yes.
Yes, one, yes. Okay, anybody else? All right, so we'll have to locate it. We got two. Okay, that's exciting. All right, that's off the table. Next, New Year's Eve in here. It will be a celebration. It'll be a party every 7 years. New Year's Eve falls on a Saturday night, and we do it right. We'll start 7 p.m. kickoff. It'll go till whenever we want to stop. Most likely, we'll probably end the night somewhere over into the Lambertville dance that runs into next day. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll have a ton of food. Mrs. K made up a sign-up list. You guys look like a bunch of people that are eager to do service and donate your time, money, and food. So this would have passed this around to you guys, because we know. And make sure you give it to the less selfish alcoholics in the group that want to take service. But anyway, we will provide a ton of food and everything. It's absolutely free. But we're looking for, of course, you guys to pull your own weight, to bring some goodies with you. Whatever you like to eat, great. That'll be fun. If you don't have anything, don't worry about it. We'll supply it for you. So that's the way it's all inclusive, never exclusive. It was a great time 7 years ago, and it won't happen again for another 7 years. So that, with that out of the way, we also have a commitment treatment center on Sunday night. Important in Quakertown, 40 to 60 guys who want to be of service. No requirement for time. That's what we do with this group. We have a ton of those commitments all during the week, Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, Sundays. If you guys are willing to carry a message of hope and recovery to the still sick and suffering on the front lines, see me after the meeting. It's a recurring commitment, so it means every week we get to fill these, and so we have a sister group, and they'll tell you more about that when they get up here to read that. But that's what we do. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. And that's what this group is all about, service. And so if you want to be in service, we welcome you to jump along and give us a hand, because that's what we do. We try to carry this message. Anyway, enough of that. We got the world's greatest chairperson tonight. Let's welcome Brian. Let's have some fun tonight. Great speaker tonight, too.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets right here every Saturday at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock every Saturday, and the speaker comes on at 8:30. The business meeting for this group meets right here every Saturday, 7 to 7:30. Please come early, show up, enjoy the refreshments, and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome anyone, especially a newcomer. So if you're new at this meeting for the first time, or you're visiting from out of town, if you'd like to introduce yourself on a first name basis so we can welcome you. James, welcome.
I am not alcoholic, first time.
John, in the back there.
Kieran, alcoholic.
Kieran, welcome.
Josh, I'm an alcoholic.
Josh, welcome. Awesome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. With anyone with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and that is willing to sponsor, please raise their hand. So there you go. You can look around the room. If you're new, grab one of those people with their hands up after the meeting. Help you hopefully get into the solution a little bit. Are there any announcements for the good of AA from the floor? Nothing from the floor, okay. A couple quick announcements from this group. This group has a sister group. It is a big book study meeting that meets every Thursday at 7:30. It's right up the road at the Salem UCC Church. Again, that's Thursday at 7:30. Coffee's on at 6:15 every Thursday. We'll be there early setting up. If you want to come again, help out with some service work, join us. Always appreciated. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone that's willing to make donations for the purchase of big books or CDs to help those who can't afford them can put their donations on the jar on the back of the table. Mark big book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. We have a YouTube channel. You can please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. And we also have a Facebook group that you can subscribe to, Conscious Contact. Follow our Facebook group. You know, we post a lot of happenings, especially with the holidays upcoming and things being uncertain. If there's anything we need to inform you of, change the location for the meeting, you know, or you can stay tuned in there. A lot of other groups will post happenings that they have, celebration meetings, that kind of stuff from the area. So it's a good resource to have to stay tied in with all types of happenings throughout AA, really like throughout the whole tri-state area. And now quickly we're going to read a brief reading of a prayer from the Just for Today prayer book. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously. Criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And with that, I'm going to throw it over to Nick, who I believe is going to come up here. He's going to read the AA preamble.
My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. The AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others who recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supported and declining for our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And now with that, I have Jay to come up and read the 12 steps of recovery.
My name is Jay, and I am an alcoholic. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And now I'd like to turn it back to the world's greatest chairperson, Brian.
Okay, 7 tradition. Every A group already fully self-supporting at this time. We're going to make sure the basket makes its way around the room. There are no dues or fees for AA, but we do have expenses. Any contributions you can afford to provide help us to provide, you know, all types of services, the events that we put on, the refreshments that are provided, so we do appreciate it. There's absolutely no smoking on the church property. Just please be considerate of that as you're coming and going. Just wait until you leave, get off the church property. Just try to keep it clean here and respect the church. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit your movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker from tonight, who is a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, who is on loan to us from the Fellowship of the Spirit Group of Ventnor, New Jersey. Please help me welcome Darren.
Just give me one moment. All right. Well, my name is Darren. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I came out from Ventnor, New Jersey. The home group is Fellowship of the Spirit. We're a big book study. We meet every Wednesday nights, 7:30. If you're ever out that way, come join us. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, right? and I sponsor guys, and a lot of those guys sponsor. And I say only that just to let you know that these 12 steps have guided me to a life that I could not possibly imagine, and all those things I listed seem to be a big part of the things I need to have that. Right? I get invited to places like this. I get to take a nice drive with one of my buddies, right? And we just get to talk a little bit about life. I get invited. Right? I don't know what your lives look like before you got out here, before you got in here, but I didn't get invited to things, except unless it was to leave, or those invites that sound something like, hey, listen, I understand if you can't make it. Right? That's what my life looked like when I got here. I did not get invited, so it's a beautiful aspect of my life to get invited to come and be a part of y'all's night tonight. And I thank y'all for that. I say recovered not to separate me from anyone. I say that for anybody sitting in here thinking that they got to continue to live and feel the way you are living and feeling right now. That book says that we recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, right? And I always like to share a little bit about what it looks like today, currently, with that, because recovered does not mean I am spiritually cured. I still have this malady where I am driven by fear, and which seems to wrap itself up in pride. Right? I'm overly concerned about what all of y'all think about me. Right? Anywhere I'm at, it's just part of me. And luckily, we have some steps here that allow me to get free of that when it pops up. Right? So currently, let's see what that looks like today. I have a roommate, and he does not do things the way I would like him to do them. Right? And that means bringing his girlfriend over while she's sick. And you are interfering in the way I deal with my life, and that is I don't want to be sick. Right? It's flu season. I have plans. I have things. I got a lot of stuff that I do, and you're going to interfere with that, and you bring over this young lady who's sick. So I get tight, just a little tight, right? The little spring inside tightens just enough, right? And I make a call. I don't cause any harm, but I certainly remind him that we should probably be more thoughtful of each other in that phone call. I don't cause harm, and I don't do it in an angry way, but I walk away from that conversation angry, right? And luckily, we have some things that this program gives me, right? And one of those is a resentment prayer, right? I can get free. I say that little prayer where I ask God to help me see him as sick, as well as me, to be useful to him, right? And then that opens me up, right? And this resentment walks away. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the reason why that prayer works for a guy like me is because I don't want to do any of those. I don't want to pray because I'm angry. I don't want to see him as sick and me as sick. I want to see me as sick and him an asshole. Oh, I forgot. Got to remind. Hopefully that'll be the last one. But that's how I want to see it, right? I'm sick. He's not. He's something else, right? And I certainly don't want to help him. I really don't. So when I do those three things, God's grace slides in and allows me to get free of that anger, right? And then I can look at the real deal, and that's the fear. What's driving me? What's the fear? Every resentment I've ever experienced is driven by fear, right? So free of that resentment, I get to look at that fear, and that fear allows me to say a prayer as well, right? God, take this fear away from, there's 3 or 4 of them, but most of the time it's a feeling of less than, or unworthiness, right? And then it asks me to have, what would God have me be? Well, patient, considerate, thoughtful, kind, understanding. All those things that I'm not at that moment. And I say that little prayer and I get free. And I'm able to reach out and I call a couple people, share it with somebody that solidifies in me this process and the experience. And I get to walk on from that and I get to share it with a couple guys and we can laugh about it. And then I recognize how serious I like to take myself in this world, right? And how dangerous that is to a guy like me. Because a little over 4 or 5 years ago, things like that take me out. Because I don't know how to deal with my emotions. Right, there's a little list of things that we call the bedevilments that let me know what my life looks like, right, when I try to manage it. Couldn't control my emotional natures is a big one for a guy like me, right? So when I show up here, I'm 43 years old. I've been drinking since I was about 12. Alcoholic from the jump. It did immediately what it was supposed to do for an individual like me. Alcohol has a job for an alcoholic. It is to convince me that I need something greater than it to live in this world. It took me 30 years to figure that out. Alcohol did a very convincing job. When I showed up here, I was ready to accept some help. And what that looks like is at 14, I go to a house party and I'm given a chance to drink the way, come to find out I like to drink. And what that looks like is I started and I did not stop. I got carried out of that house party and that would continue. That was how I drank. When I start, I can't stop. And when I stop, I can't seem to stay stopped. You know, maybe I get short little periods here and there of staying stopped. But early on, it doesn't look bad. It really doesn't. You know, I do have 2 parents in the household. I'm not going to say it was a healthy relationship, but there was 2 of them. There was a roof, there's food on the table, there's vacations. I was a sports guy, class act on when it came to soccer. Would get a Division I scholarship, Olympic development, all these cool little things. But you give me a chance to drink and use other substances, and I do. And those would soon become priority in my life very quickly. At the age of 17, I went off to college. They were not impressed with my talent, the way everybody else had been throughout my career of soccer, which had started at the age of 4. And this was the first time where I had been, well, I had not been the big man on campus when it came to a sport. And that crushed me. I didn't recognize it at the time. I thought, oh, great, well, now I can go off and enjoy college life. And, well, that's what I did. I did what any great drunk would do, and I joined a fraternity. And I failed out of that school. And I would move back home and move in with my parents, these people who I'd been trying to run away from for quite a while. You know, my father was an angry individual for a long time. I described it as he used the belt as a tool of discipline. I recently got a new sponsor and we've been doing a little deeper dive on what that actually looks like. The unhealed wounds that living in a house that is run by fear and by violence does to a child, right? And I no longer look at that as that. I look at it as that man physically, emotionally, and physically abused me. But by looking at it from a more healed place, I developed compassion for that man. At the age of 13, I was sitting at the top of the stairs with his gun, waiting to kill him when he got home from work. But God intervened. Now I don't see it like that. I can look backwards, right? We live forward, look backwards. And what I saw was my mother walk in the door early, very early, 3 hours early. My mom was a 9 to 5. My dad was an electrician. He was a union electrician off by 2:30. I was at the top of the stairs at 3 o'clock. My mom walked in at 3:10. And that's God in my life, right? I don't know it at the time. But when I go in and I do a little writing about that, I can see where God's been at in my life for a really long time. And what that allows me to do is start seeing how big God can be. He's bigger than just what I show up here with. I was raised Catholic. Catholic high schools, all-boy Catholic high school, middle school, altar boy. And all I can remember about that is at 17 when I graduated, I promised myself I would never be stepping foot into a church again. Maybe a funeral, maybe a wedding, right? And that's about what I stuck with. You know, my sister got married in the church. Okay, I'll go. I grew up in Washington, D.C. There was a lot of funerals. Mid-'80s was a crazy time. It introduced me to some other things. I enjoy accelerants because that's how much I drink. I need things. I drink everywhere. I drink at work. I'm a blackout drinker. And that's just what I was from the beginning, man. And the funny thing is when I have a man explain to me what I suffer from, when I get to that rehab at 43, I still have enough fight in me to disagree with me being the way y'all are, right? But y'all don't understand. See, I got my list. I got my list of why I'm different than y'all, right? Those older kids that molested me when I was younger, that young man that committed suicide sitting next to me, that father, right? All these things that make me different from y'all, in my mind, right? And that's the separation. And that's the stuff that kills a guy like me. But luckily I had people in my life that kept truth in the forefront of our relationship. And what I would be told is that's not what makes me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is when I start, I can't stop. And when I stop, I can't stop. Those situations create a little bigger divide between me and the solution that this program offers a guy like me, and that's a God of my understanding, right? But what happens is when those things do go down, I start to recognize and think that perhaps this God doesn't like me, right? And then I kind of agree with that idea. I don't like him, right? I see this old white dude up on the clouds in the white gear with the staff, raining down judgment, angry, vengeful, spiteful, and that's what I show up here with. And then plus I do some things when I'm out there. I'm willing to go to any lengths for alcohol. I harmed a lot of people before I got here. And luckily I've had great sponsorship along the way, and I've been able to clean up a lot of that and continue to. I'm a big believer that we will be given an opportunity to clean up that list, right? You know, as long as we stay in this and continue to move in this, right? So I get out of that college, well, I fail out of it, and I come home and I spend about 6 or 7 months with the family. That does not work out well. My alcoholism is full blown. Parents don't understand it. Mom believes the story that I've sold her about all these things happening and that being why I'm that. And she just thinks maybe a counselor would be able to help, a psychiatrist, change of venue type of thing might help, right? So I go back, I go in and I get my grades up, and I transfer to the University of Maryland. And I bring that young kid along with me, the one that committed suicide. And we go in and we hang out with a couple of my neighborhood buddies from back that I'd grown up with, and we do the things that we do. You know, stack 40s along the way, a lot of other added bonuses to that. And we're celebrating one night, and this young man decides that the illness he suffers from is too much, and he commits suicide. And I take that, and I take it, and I don't take it to mourn it. I take it to use it. And what I do is I use it as the perfect excuse for me to be what I am for at least the next 25 years. And I go about it, and I harm everybody that comes into contact with me. And I say, yeah, but you don't understand. See, this is what happened. If you had to live this type of life, you would do the same thing. And I use it for sympathy. I use it so that you people will understand why I'm so damaged. And that works. That works for a while. And when it stops working, I move, right? I do. I just move. And I'm not afraid of that. I will leave in a heartbeat. I've left towns from a bar stool to an airport, right? I left Rhode Island to come back to Maryland. I went from Maryland to Virginia to D.C. to New York to Florida, back to D.C., back to Florida. And then I moved 6 times within that last stop in Florida, within Florida. because my story gets old and my actions show up quicker, right? When I first start moving, I'm good for about 9 months before my real drinking starts showing up. The real Darren starts showing up. Me and Josh were laughing about that on the drive in. This idea of, oh man, he's so crazy. And that turns to, man, he's crazy. And, there's a shift between how you initially see me and how, when it hits you full on, what it starts to look like. And at that point, I know what that means. It's time to leave. Whether it be that town, that job, that girl, that neighborhood, whatever it is, it's time for me to move on. Because I have bought into my own story so well that I do not believe that I have anything that I could do, and that this is what God has created me. This is what I am, right? And unfortunately, I was a big fan of women being a solution, right? They seem to satisfy something internally long enough for me to feel like maybe there was a shot. Maybe there was a chance that I was going to grow up and grow out of this. Unfortunately, what I've learned in this journey is external solutions do not solve this internal problem that I suffer from. They have expiration dates on them. And just like alcohol stopped working, the girl stops working, the moving stops working, the switch of jobs, anything along that lines, the gambling, whatever else, right? Whatever else I tried to stuff inside that spiritual hole, it stops working, right? But I blame you, and it's time to try a new one, right? And that's what I do. And then, I've run into a young lady who's, she's willing to stick around. I'm not sure why, but she was willing to stick around, and she stuck around long enough for us to get married. We dated for about 10 years, married for about 3. There was a lot of things in between there that kept us from breaking up. Her brother got cancer, and for some reason, I seem to show up for the big things. I seem to be able to show up and act like a decent man during large problems, right? But the day-to-day actions, what they look like is, honey, I promise, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to stop drinking for, I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to take a week off. And, that's when the doghouse is little, and she hasn't completely lost hope in me. And unfortunately, that doghouse keeps getting bigger. And my promises and declarations keep getting bigger. And what it sounds like is I'm going to quit drinking for a month. I'm going to quit drinking for a year. I'm done forever. And yet, my experience shows me about 3 days, this thing on top of my shoulder starts talking to me and starts saying things like, hey, buddy, you're doing really good here. This is quite amazing. You stopped drinking for 3 days. So I think we could probably get away with having a drink tonight at work. And now, of course, I haven't acknowledged the fact that I've done many other things during those 3 days, because that's not my problem. Drinking's my problem. Those other things are just, that thing has my name on it and it was given to me by a doctor. The other things, it's almost legal. So those aren't my problems. And what happens is I have that one, and then, I do what I always do. And that is I have 2. And 3, and so on, until I don't come home that night because I told her I wasn't going to drink anymore. And here I am again at 3 o'clock in the morning, barely standing, still trying to find another drink. And I can't go home like that again because she's going to leave me. And she does. She does. She shows up one day. I say that like it wasn't her house. So she comes home one day. And and she says, hey, listen, we haven't really talked in a while. And kind of thinking maybe it's time I move on. And this might be possibly the first selfless act I ever took in my life. And I was like, I think that's probably a good idea. She was still pretty young. And for some reason, something in me told me that this was nowhere near done. And I would find that to be true. I was out there for another 4.5 years after that. And it steeply declined when she walked out. But I mean, here's the type of drunk I am. I'm going to give you a couple little scenarios so that you, in case you don't think that that start can't can't stay stopped action is not how my life looked. The day of our divorce, I am brought up from the basement in this medium jumpsuit. See, because the night before, I'd actually forgot we were getting a divorce, and I had gone out to celebrate the World Cup. We had beaten Ghana, I think, in the last minute. And, well, I do what I do, and we celebrate, right, as if I was on the team. And I wake up, and I realize that, hey, you know, it's still early. The bars are still open. I'm going to go have a little bit more, and I get pulled over along the way, right? And, well, I get arrested. You know, I decline. You know, I'm smart. You're not catching me like that. I'm not doing the breathalyzer. I'm not giving blood. Laws were a little different in Florida. And I come to in a cot in a gymnasium in the bottom of this courthouse, trying to figure out what had happened. And they called me out, and well, here's the type of person I am. I thought one of my friends was bailing me out. Right? I'm like, ha, awesome. My boy's showing up. This is great. I don't even know how they found out. I didn't even see anybody, but I'm like, I'm sure this is got to be one of my buddies. And they bring me up to a nice, cute little jail cell. It's all real nice wood. Kind of looks like this type of wood. And they sit me in there, and I'm like, well, this is different. I've been to a lot of jails. I don't ever remember them doing this. And then they bring me through a big oak door. And, well, there's the court. And there she is, dressed like she's always dressed, professional. You know, looking like she knew that we had divorce that day. And here I come in this medium jumpsuit, right? The orange, it's up to my arms and above the ankles. And I do what I have to do, and that is I deflect. And I say, Your Honor, you see why we're here today. You know, and everybody laughs. And I'm like, it can't be that bad. And I look at her and I say, hey, can you bail me out? And she's like, yeah. And she does. And I mean, these are the type of people that are in my life. They still are standing by me. I'm in jail for our divorce, and she still bails me out, right? And I have no memory, no recollection of what had gone on the night before, or thinking that, hey, you know what, I should probably show up for this divorce and show a little respect to the sanctity of marriage. That's not my thoughts. And during those 4.5 years after she left, life got really, really dark. I took on a girlfriend who was just like me, because I figured, well, we can just pay attention to her, and we won't have to look at me. We'll just try to help her, because that's what I do. I look at y'all, and I try to help y'all. I don't want to look inside me. I already know what's going on inside me. I've already seen it, and it's not good. So let's just look at you. So I get a girl who, well, come to find out, it's actually worse than me. She showed me a whole new level of what alcoholism looks like. And she took me to a bottom very quickly. But along that way, I hit a spot that when that man asked me those 2 questions in rehab, it was the thing that I went back to. And he said, when you stop, can you stay stopped? Right? And I had to answer no, but he wanted me to really ponder upon that. And I went right back to this story. And what this story is after that DUI that I got off of, like I've gotten off of everything. I was staring at 10 years in New York, I got a slap on the wrist. I was staring at time in DC, slap on the wrist. Rhode Island, slap on the wrist. Florida, I get a DUI thrown out for a technicality. But I still have to do the 12 weeks of visiting counselor, right? And then you got to do some random urine screens, right? And I'm a smart man, and I figure out that it's about 80 hours that this test goes back, this urine screen. I can do math. That's like 3.5 days. It means I only have to not drink for 3.5 days. That's all I got to do. I just got to get through 3.5 days. And I have those little pills that are in that bottle that's got my name on it. And I'm like, I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to be able to do this. And I drink until that 3.5 days come up. And then I go in and they don't test me. And I'm like, okay. And I'm starting to count weeks because there's 12 and there's 2 or 3 randoms. And they come up one week and they're like, okay, we're going to go have you take that urine screen. I'm like, awesome. This is great because I'm going to pass. Right? I've been following directions here. I've been following the directions. And I go and I do this urine screen. And I pass. And this disease starts talking to me immediately. And what it starts telling me and what it starts selling me is the story that it's always sold me. And that is I think we deserve something here. I think we could probably go have a couple drinks and it's going to be okay. They're not going to test you next week. That's not random. They wouldn't do it 2 weeks in a row. That's not very random. I'm here to tell you it's really random. Really, really random. Because I do exactly what an alcoholic does who when he starts and he can't stop. And I show up at that Friday and the guy looks at me and goes, hey, listen, I'm going to need you to go and take that urine screen again. And I was like, we did that last week. And he goes, oh, I know. And I was like, well, listen, how long do I have? Right? And I got to start coming up with lies here. I got to figure out how, because I'm going to jail. They got some things in that folder that are going to take me, there's some stuff in there beyond the DUI charge. There's some other things in there that are pending my quality of action. Right? So I'm going to go away. And what happens is he says, he gives me my way out, right? Always. Just always this way out. And I don't see this as God, but I can today. God was protected. He protects his children. Sometimes it doesn't look like that, but my experience is he does. And I have 5 hours. Now, I don't know anybody that's sober, so I don't know where I'm going to get this urine from, but I have 5 hours to try to come up with a solution. And I go back to that house where that young lady lives with me, and we're trying to figure it out. I make a couple phone calls. Nothing's working out. And she looks at me and she goes, well, my daughter, and she didn't finish that sentence before I said, you need to go get her. And this was a 12-year-old girl in middle school. And I invite that individual into my life to help me deal with the idea that I can't stay stopped, right? Now, I still don't see it, but I did see it when he asked me, could I ever do that? And I remember thinking back, I did not hesitate when that became an option. When I said I was willing to go to any length for alcohol, that's where I was at. So I don't know what your alcoholism looks like, and it doesn't matter. But if you take those 2 questions and you can address those into your life, you're probably sitting in the right room, right? If you start and you can't stop, and you stop and you can't stay stopped. And guess what? I got away with it, like I always did, right? But that's become a very useful tool for me today. And that's what I find out how God works in my life, is these things that I had to go through are now useful when I try to sit down and help somebody else, or I get invited to speak from a podium, or I go into the rehabs, or I go into a detox and I get to sit down with these guys and I can share those things that a lot of us have had to deal with on our journey here. The unhealed wounds that not only alcohol causes, but that life causes, right? And what happens is this darkness that's resided in me for an extremely long time starts to look like light. Because what happens is God starts shining out of that darkness into the hearts of those who are still in the darkness. And they can see that perhaps there is a way out from these things that happen to us, these situations. And all of a sudden I can look back on all these things that I was so afraid to share with anyone. And I can start sharing them with y'all because I'm free of that. And that's what these 12 steps do for a man like me. They get me free of these things that I did throughout my life and these things that were done to me throughout my life. And I find some freedom. It starts out looking like relief, and that's fine. When I get here, I'm a relief junkie, right? Because that's all those things did for me anyways. They didn't give me freedom. They sold me that idea, and they gave me relief. The problem with relief is it's not lasting. It's not a permanent effect, right? all it does is it's like snapping that branch off that's poking me in the eye. Problem is the branch grows back, right? And I'm like, there it is again. I need freedom. And that's what these steps offer. Freedom, right? Freedom from the bondage of self, right? So I get here and this man's talking to me about start can't stop, stop can't stay, stop. He starts talking to me about unmanageability, right? And what does that look like? Well, at the time, he kept it very simple. I was very chewed up when I arrived at rehab. And he said, listen, kid, he said, your life's unmanageable because you're not management material. He said, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're in bed pants, and you have a wrist bracelet on, and you're 43 years old. He said, and you want to sit here and try to tell me that you're managing your life well. And he was telling the truth. I did have bed pants on, and they had a nice little insignia of the rehab I was in. And I had the wrist bracelet on, and I haven't done much that day, even though I'm in a rehab that's offering me solution-based, right? And that's the type of truth that a person like me needs. See, to me, truth either rubs me or it hugs me. And if I'm willing, then what it's always going to do is hug me, even when it stings, man. When it rubs me, I'm probably in a pretty bad area at that moment, more than likely starting to shape off into a delusion, right? That I'm okay and that you can't possibly be trying to help me, right? So I get the simplicity of that, right? And luckily I have a sponsor at that time. I've recently got a new sponsor. I was looking for a deeper spiritual dive. The guy I had was beautiful. He brought me to a point where it was time to grow and move along, right? And that's been an amazing process. But the guy I had understood that book, and he pointed out some things in that book to me, especially in We Agnostics, that said, however inadequate your understanding of this God thing is, it's enough. It is enough. And that was good. See, because when I get here, my understanding of God is he hates me, I hate him. I've attached a bunch of human characteristics to him. And I've started to find fault in him. But he told me that that's inadequate, but it's enough. It's enough. You just need to be willing to allow that to change, to set aside those ideas for perhaps some new ones, right? Now, where I'm at right now is when I came back through these steps, what my sponsor wanted to focus on wasn't that part. What he wanted to focus on was what they would consider the second step proposition, and that is God either is or he isn't. He's either everything or he's nothing. Where is that looking like in my life right now? I write out a list of all the things that I don't invite God into. And then there's a fear attached to that. Why don't I invite God into my finances or into my personal affairs? Why am I leaving him out of my health? Well, because I'm afraid. I'm afraid what I'm going to be if I let go. These are the things that feed my ego to make me feel like I'm a part of something, that I'm not less than anymore, that I'm actually doing things. And I don't want to give the credit to God. I want to take it. I want to have something where I can stand up and lean on it, because all I do is pull y'all down to stand taller, because all I can do is judge y'all, because I don't feel like y'all look. I don't feel like how y'all sound. And I wake up and I immediately feel less than, right? Because I had a father who set a bar that was unattainable by anyone. And there were repercussions for not attaining that. And that's what I show up as a young man who's got an 8-year-old child living inside of him, who when that button is pushed, that unhealed wound is touched, responds the way that child would, right? And I feel inadequate. I feel unworthy. So what we're doing now is we're trying to see that God's bigger than that. There's a whole universe out there, and can I understand that maybe God created that? Not just the God I have in AA, or that I had in religion, or any of that. But can I expand upon that God and get a really big God? See, because we're getting ready to dive into some stuff, and we've been diving into some stuff now. Right? I had to come to some real truth. I had to come to some truths that my mother was complicit in what went on in that household, because she said things. And what that sounded like was, you wait till your father gets home. And she knew what that Almost. I caught it. I told you. I'm going to be the last one. She knew what that meant. She knew what that meant when she said those words, wait till your father gets home. Right? She knew exactly what that meant because she lived there. She had to experience it herself. Right? My dad hit her with a frying pan, stabbed her with a broken wine glass, cracked my sternum. This is an angry man, right? But what happens is I start to uncover these things in this inventory on the second go around. And what happens is instead, because it looks like if I'm going to look at this some more, I'm just going to get angrier. And I'm never going to be able to forgive this man. And what happens is when I look at it this time, I open that box up that I've shoved off in the corner, because guess what? I'd already made amends to him. I'd already done inventory on him. I'm good. We're good. But yet I can't seem to really spend any time around him. And we're getting ready to go on a 10-day trip out west to do some skiing. And yet I can't spend any time with him because I'm not over this, right? I'm not done with this. But I think that if we look at this, I'm going to end up hating this man, and he may never make it back from that trip because I'm not 13 years old and my mother's not going to show up this time, right? That's how deep this anger had gotten. But instead, what happens is I open that box up and God arrives. And that wound gets healed. And what happens is there's more God. There's less Darren, more God. And we start looking at some other things, and I start to look at being able to forgive my mother for being complicit because she had her own fears of what was going on in that household. And instead of being angry at her for playing her part, I become compassionate and understanding. Right? Because there are actions driven by fear. I have done those things. Maybe they don't look the same, but the actions are the same. Right? Driven by fear. Right? And I start getting compassion. And all of a sudden, all that judgment that I used to walk around handing out to all of y'all, not usually out loud, but up here, the squirrel, just, I wake up and I'm thinking about what y'all aren't doing right. But just so you know, that statement that little story I shared with you earlier about my roommate, see, I'm not perfect. And I'm getting to a place where it is okay for me to be human, right? It's okay to not reach those bars that I feel life sets for me sometimes that look unattainable, right? And it's okay to just be okay, right? It's always baffled me why a guy like me would show up here with the idea that I was supposed to be perfect when I've never done anything perfect in my life except drink. But yet I set that to everything. And it doesn't make sense to me until I start uncovering some of these things in some inventory, right? And then, beautiful thing is I get to look at these things. And I get to look at these flaws driven by pride, right? Selfish, lustful, greedy, right? Not just greedy financially, but greedy for your attention, your time, just you, right? I get to look at my personal relationship with the young lady. I'm 49 years old. I have the healthiest relationship I've ever been in, and I've been dating since I was 12. All because of this program. Sex Inventory lays it out perfectly for me. It says we ask God to help mold our ideals. I don't know what ideals are, so I got to figure out what that is, right? And then I get to go to God and I get to ask him, can you help me here? I don't want to hurt your daughters anymore. I don't want to hurt your children. Because I'm so twisted when I get here and someone says, you do realize women are God's children too. And I'm like, what? Oh, I don't think I ever looked at it that way. That's not the type of household I was raised in, right? And it tells me I get these ideals, and what do? I can write a prayer? So I write a prayer about these ideals, and all of a sudden God starts showing up because he knows in my heart that I am trying to be a man that can be useful to his children, women included, right? But I get to take these things into 6 and 7, and I find them objectionable. Not all of them, but the first time I went through it, I found them extremely objectionable because I was disgusted at my actions. It's a little different today because I have a couple years, right? So not all of them look terrible. to me, right? Because my ego is like, oh, no, that one's not that bad. It's okay. It'll be fine. We'll just manage a little bit better on that one. We just got to, right? And it'll always bring me back to that I can manage, right? But I go to God and I offer these to him, the good and the bad. The good and the bad. See, because I can't, it doesn't matter. In my hands, I'm the extreme version. I crumble them. It always makes me think, I don't know if anybody in here has seen Tommy Boy, when he's sitting in the diner and he has the muffin in his hand and he's petting it, right? And then he just starts to crumble it, right? And he's talking about a sales, right? Well, that's me with my flaws, the good ones or the bad ones. I'm like, oh, they're just so good. I got this. And I just rip it apart because I don't know how to deal with them, right? These are God-given instincts. The problem is I lack power. I lack power, so I do not know how. See, they look like they give me power, right? But it's a false power. So I don't know how to manage that, right? But I say a nice little prayer. I hit my knees and I say this prayer to God. And then I get to go in and I get to do some amends and I get to go clean up the wreckage to these people that I've harmed. Not so I can check their name off the list. Not so that I can do that, but so that I can go and take that pile of stuff that I laid on their lap by telling them it was their fault. And I get to take that from them, so perhaps maybe there's some healing in them. That perhaps maybe they can walk free of that. And I've done a lot of amends. That first girlfriend I dated, when we started dating at the age of 12, we dated through high school. We had a conversation for about an hour, right? And what happened during that hour is we got to create and reunite a friendship, right? And she said, you don't have to do this. I said, oh, I understand that. But I believe that this journey I'm on with this God, it would have me do this. And she ended up texting me the next day. See, because I don't know what this is going to look like. Right? I don't know what this is going to look like. 9 out of 10 times the unexpected happens. Right? And she calls and she reaches out and she says, my God, I didn't realize how much I really needed to hear that. This is 30 years later, 40 years later almost. Right? I don't know what this is going to look like. But if I keep showing up, I do know that things are going to happen. Right? That man that I told you I was looking to end his life, that man called Dad, possibly one of the more powerful amends I've ever done. This man had a stroke 6 years ago. He suffers from dysphagia, which means the words come in, they don't make a lot of sense, and they don't make a lot of sense going out either. It's very difficult to talk to this man. I had tried to make amends to him a couple times. God intervened because there was not truth behind those amends. I was not prepared. I just wanted to get him off the list, and God intervened. And what happened was I got to a point where I was coming down and I had made an amends with my mother. And I said, listen, I need you to go explain to Dad that when I get down there, we're going to talk. And she understood what I was doing because I had made one with her, right? And she did the best she could with him. And when I got down there, we talked for a little bit. I went off into the little side room, and all I said to God was, please help him be a part of this. Not for me, for him. That's all I want. I just want him to be a part of this. Help him find some freedom. Because I know he carries weight. I know he does. I know he blames himself. Right? And I went in and we started having a conversation. And this man who has never been able to share cleanly, concisely with me since the stroke was able to tell me a couple stories from his childhood that I had never heard before. Right? And I knew that he heard me because he started crying. And this is a man who was raised on the streets of Washington, D.C. in the 60s. I'm going to let you know, this man does not cry. That is not, he was raised on the streets. Right? This is not that. And I get to see God at work. And I get to see God at work. Right? And it is beyond powerful to me. It changed my life. Right? Not enough for me to change that relationship. But what it did is it opened me up to the idea that perhaps there was more available for me and him. He'll be 84 by the time we go on that skiing trip. So I don't know how much longer he'll be here, but I know that trip is going to be amazing because I'm going to be able to go there with compassion, understanding. right? Love, love, right? That's powerful to me, right? And I get to do all these events, and I still have a long list, right? There's some women out there that probably will never allow me to reach out to them. But I do what this book has suggested, and it says things like, we write letters to those who can't be seen. It was described to me that doesn't mean that just because that only is referencing dead people. It was described to me as, well, you can't see those people. Maybe you should write something to the universe. Is it possible that maybe God is that big? Maybe you could write a letter to their spirit. And I've done that. To that young man that committed suicide, though, I wrote a letter, and that was mind-blowing. That experience I got to have with that when I went back and read that letter about a week later, and I saw the honesty and truth of what I bring to the table. This young man committed suicide, and I walked around and dragged his name through the mud for 25 years, telling everybody that would listen that it was his fault. He's the cause of this, right? But instead I get to send that letter out with an idea that God, right? Are we spiritual beings having a human experience? And I don't know. It's been told to me that that's the case. So why wouldn't I write that letter, right? And then, I get to live this 24-hour a day, one day at a time program through 10, 11, and 12. I described to you earlier what 10 and 11 and 12 look like on a daily basis for me. If I'm in front of the ball, I don't have to do all those things, right? If I'm in front. When I'm behind the ball, I got to do those things in step 10. Right? But if I'm connected and I'm walking on the beam, then it's going to be okay, right? And if I'm disconnected, it's going to be okay as well, right? Sandy Beach, one of our great orators, and just check here if I got time. Okay. I'm going to end on this little story. Sandy Beach, if you haven't heard him, please go find his tapes. You can go on YouTube. Sorry. I know tapes are, you're like, what? Tapes? Go find him on YouTube, any sort of format that you can find him. He talked about the idea, he was a pilot in the military back in the day, prior to them having airport towers to kind of help guide you. Right? What they had was like little sonar things that would bounce off across the country. They were like little guiding roads. Right? And what would happen is in your headset, you would hear the ding on one side or the other, depending on which way you were off course, right? So if you were in your right ear, you would hear the ding, you would know that it was time to come back a little left, and that would put you back in center. And if it was in the left side, then you knew it was time to come back right, to come back to center. He said, but there was one thing that you learned very quickly, and that is if you're never hearing any dings, you're so far off that you're in a dangerous place. And I think about that today in my recovery. And I know that it's okay when I'm hearing those dings when I'm a little off center, because it's okay. Thank y'all.
My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Incredible. Darren, thank you again for coming here tonight and delivering just a powerful message of hope and recovery to our group. We're right up against the hour, so a couple quick announcements and we'll get out of here. Again, the food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock, so feel free to show up early if you want to help out with some service work. Always appreciate a little bit of help in the kitchen. If you want to help out with some service work now, you can help us put away the chairs. We're going to have to put away all these chairs in the front and on the sides. The ones back there by the tables will stay right where they're sitting. Again, if you're out there and if you're new or if you're struggling, hang out. There's always a meeting after the meeting. Grab someone after the meeting. We'll all be hanging out here for a little while. We always thank our speakers. It's customary for us to thank our speakers on a personal basis. They come here on their own time to come and share a message with us. So we usually form a line in the front here, thank our speakers personally. And if you do care to join us, we have a nice way of closing.